Okay, I want you to picture a scene with me. You're in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's, let's say, the mid-90s. There's this guy. He's driving a Jaguar XJ6 British racing green, of course. He's wearing a crisp linen suit.
Yeah.
On the weekends, see him on the Intracoastal Waterway. He's on a 28-foot Sea Ray. But during the week, he's in these high-rise boardrooms arguing with American lawyers about prior art and patent law.
Right.
So when you build that profile in your head, who do you see?
Well, your mind just defaults to corporate royalty, doesn't it? You're thinking this is someone born into the Ivy League or, I don't know, an international business mogul with an MBA from Wharton.
Exactly. You assume he's always belonged in that room.
Always.
But the source material we're covering today it completely shatters that image. Because the man in the Jaguar, he didn't start with a trust fund. He started as a barefoot kid in the Brazilian countryside, a place called Uberlândia.
A world away.
A world away. No private tutors. He grew up chasing homemade kites and playing goalkeeper on dirt streets. And he didn't learn English in some fancy prep school. He learned it from a cheap record player and a stack of scratched vinyl records.
It's an incredible contrast, but maybe the most surprising part of his story isn't how he got into the Jaguar, but what he did after.
The arguments after, yeah.
He had that whole lifestyle. But he didn't stay. He walked away from all of it to go back to his roots and, well, fundamentally change how people learn a new language.
We are talking about Hamilton Garcia Jr., known to pretty much everyone as Bird. And today we are doing a deep dive into his memoirs, which are perfectly titled Bird of Many Tongues.
It's a fantastic read. And, on the surface, it could be an adventure novel. It's got that rags to riches, then redemption kind of arc. But if you look a little closer, and this is really our mission for this deep dive, it's actually a manual on social mobility.
A manual? How so?
It's arguing that language isn't just a subject you study, like algebra. It's a passport. It's a tool that lets you move between different worlds, different realities.
And that's the core theme, right? Fluency with purpose. It's not about passing a test. It's about surviving and thriving.
Yeah.
But before we get to the patent lawyers and the speedboats, we have to talk about how it all started, the Bird method.
Yes.
Because looking at those early chapters, his approach to learning English was, well, let's just call it unconventional.
Unconventional is a very polite way to put it. I'd say it was obsessive. And we have to set the scene here. This is the 1970s in Minas Gerais, Brazil. So this is pre-internet. No Duolingo, no YouTube, nothing.
Right. He talks about a world of transistor radios and climbing trees. But then there's this one moment he writes about at age 12. He walks into a language school called CCAA.
That's the spark. He said he felt a fire in his heart. And you have to pause there. For most 12-year-olds, a grammar class it's a sedative. It's not a fire.
It's where fun goes to die, yeah?
Exactly. But for Bird, the sounds of English weren't rules. They weren't homework. They were music.
And this is where his whole method starts. He didn't have money for fancy gadgets, so he used what he had, a record player. But he wasn't just listening. He was doing something that linguists now call shadowing.
But he didn't know the term then.
No, he had no idea. But can you explain what that actually is? Because I think most of us just hear repeating.
It's so much more than repeating. Repeating is sequential,
Yeah.
I say something, you wait, you say it back. Shadowing is simultaneous. You listen and you speak at the exact same time, trying to match the speaker's intonation, their rhythm, even their pauses for breath.
So it's more like learning the lyrics to a song than learning a code.
Precisely. It builds neuromuscular memory in your mouth. Bird writes about listening to a simple phrase like, hello, how are you? Maybe hundreds of times. He wasn't memorizing the words. He already knew them. He was calibrating his mouth to move like a native speaker.
He said it became a new way of thinking.
It did. While other kids were collecting comic books, he was collecting phrasal verbs and intonation patterns.
Which brings us to this first big surprise in his story. You have a kid who is obsessed with the mechanics of language. You didn't think he'd go study linguistics, right? Or maybe literature.
But he doesn't. He goes to the Federal University of Uberlândia, UFU, and he majors in biology.
Biology? I mean, he's out in the Cerrado biome tagging butterflies. It just feels like such a huge detour.
It seems like a total left turn, but when you look at his teaching philosophy later on, this is actually the key to everything.
Okay, connect the dots for me.
Think about what a biologist does. You don't tell a butterfly how to fly. You observe it. You look for patterns, for life cycles, for structure. You analyze its morphology, how it's built to survive in its environment.
Ah, so you're saying he applied that same scientific method to English grammar.
That's exactly it. He says in the memoirs he stopped seeing grammar as just a list of abstract rules, don't do this because a textbook says so, and started seeing it as a living ecosystem.
Wow.
A sentence has a structure that lets meaning fly, just like a butterfly's wings.
That is a much more powerful way to look at it. Instead of, I have to memorize this, it's, I need to understand this structure so the organism survives.
And that gave him this unique edge when he started teaching at just 21. He was still a biology student, teaching English to engineers and medical students.
And let's be clear, he had no official certification,
Yeah.
no CELTA, nothing. Just, as he puts it, instinct and rhythm.
Which, ironically, was a huge help. He wasn't weighed down by academic dogma. He just saw that these really smart, serious engineers were terrified. Terrified of looking stupid.
So he used his musical approach.
Exactly. He treated verb tenses like little stories and vocabulary like song lyrics. He broke down their fear because he wasn't acting like a professor. He was just a guide.
And that success seems to have made him want more. He wanted to master the Queen's English. So in 1994, he makes this big move, leaves Brazil for Bromley in southeast London.
It's that classic hero's journey stuff, right? Crossing the threshold. He went from this sunny tropical biome to, foggy London streets.
Big change.
Huge. And he was there to prep for the CPE, the Cambridge Proficiency Exam, which, for anyone who doesn't know, it's brutal. It's the highest level. It requires this near-native command of nuance and idiom. You can't just guess your way through it.
He passes, but he doesn't stay in England. The story shifts again, this time to the United States. And this is where it really becomes that movie script we talked about at the start.
This chapter is so important because it completely redefines what fluency even means. He starts as an interpreter for the Pereira family, but that role it expands rapidly. He becomes what I'd call a ghost CEO.
Ghost CEO. I love that. What does that actually mean? Because interpreter sounds pretty passive.
An interpreter translates words. A ghost CEO translates intent and then manages the consequences. The family was doing these high-stakes business deals, but they didn't fully get the legal or cultural framework of the U.S. So Bird became their avatar. He wasn't just speaking for them, he was thinking for them in English.
That patent story is the perfect example. He's in meetings with lawyers from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, the USPTO, talking about a 4-digit digital key lock.
And you really have to appreciate how difficult that is. Patent law is its own language. It is not everyday English. You have to understand a term like prior art.
Okay, unpack that. What is prior art?
Prior art is basically any evidence that your invention already exists somewhere in the world. Maybe a description of it was in a magazine from 1980 or a similar patent was filed. That's prior art, and it kills your patent.
So he's not just translating the lock opens.
No. He's arguing the nuances of mechanical engineering and legal precedent against American lawyers who do this for a living. One wrong word, one mistranslation, and millions of dollars could just vanish.
That is a long way from the book is on the table.
It's fluency under the most extreme pressure. But it wasn't just the technical jargon. He also had to deal with local zoning boards. There's this one story about a sign in Boca Raton that I think just perfectly captures this idea of cultural fluency.
Oh, the too tropical sign. Yes, I remember that.
Right. The family wanted to put up a sign. The Boca Raton zoning board rejects it. Not because it was too big or the wrong font. They said the specific shade of orange was too tropical.
Which is... that has to be code for something else.
It's absolutely code. It's a cultural dog whistle. To that board, too tropical meant low class or outsider or doesn't fit the vibe of Boca Raton. You're not going to find that in any dictionary.
Yeah.
You only learn that by living it. And Bird had to decode that social signal and explain to his bosses why they had to pick a more muted color to get their permit.
He was navigating class as much as he was navigating language. And he was living the part too. The sharp suit, the Jaguar XJ6. They called him the butler with the brain.
It was a seductive life. He's cruising on that Sea Ray on the weekends, champagne. I mean, he achieved the American dream, but by proxy. But the real takeaway for him, the big lesson from this period, wasn't the luxury.
It was the empowerment.
It was the empowerment. He realized that real fluency isn't about having a perfect British accent, which he'd spent years perfecting. It's about being understood, being respected, and getting things done. That is fluency with purpose.
And that realization is what brings him back home, back to Brazil. He could have stayed.
Yeah.
But he returns to Uberlandia,
Yeah.
and he's not the same teacher who left.
No, not at all. He comes back as a fixer, and he brings that high-stakes war room mentality right into the classroom.
He breaks down his teaching career into 3 phases back home. First, CCAA, which he calls the fun years.
Yeah, that was his musical phase coming back around. English nights, sketches, Beatles songs. It was all about dialogue and engagement. But then he moves to a school called Anglo, and the whole tone just changes.
He calls the Anglo classroom a war room. That's
Oh.
pretty intense for a high school English class.
It's because of the vestibulars. The university entrance exams in Brazil, like the ENEM, are brutally competitive. It's a zero-sum game. If you get one question wrong, you could lose your spot in medical school to the kid sitting right next to you.
So fun English isn't going to cut it. You can't just sing Yellow Submarine and hope you get into law school.
Exactly. You can't sing your way through a logic trap. These exams are designed to trick you. So Byrd had to shift from being an entertainer to being a strategic commander.
He mentions using surgical clarity.
He taught his students how to dissect texts. He'd show them the logic behind the multiple choice traps, how the examiners use distractors to pull you to the wrong answer. This is where being a ghost CEO paid off. He treated that exam like a legal contract. Find the loophole, win the point.
And then the third phase, at a school called INEICOC, seems to be where he puts it all together, the fun and the strategy. But what I love is that he didn't stop being the fixer when he left the classroom.
The bureaucracy poet.
Yes, such a great phrase. He was helping local families with visa applications.
And that's the empathy, you know. He knew how intimidating a U.S. or British consulate can feel. It's a fortress. But Byrd had been on the other side of that desk. He knew the language of the gatekeepers.
He talks about ghostwriting emails, prepping people for interviews. He said he made bureaucracy feel poetic.
He was using his superpower, his fluency, to lower the drawbridge for other people.
Which brings us to today, the digital age. After teaching for over 30 years, he decides to launch his legacy project, the BIRD methodology.
Right. BIRD stands for Bringing Innovative and Rapid Development. It's a bit of a mouthful, but the idea behind it is very sleek. He launched Byrd Online, and he deliberately rejected the standard way of teaching.
You mean starting with this is a pen or the colors are?
Exactly. He starts with controversy. Lesson 1 might be about artificial intelligence or climate change or some cultural taboo.
That seems counterintuitive. Why throw a beginner into the deep end like that?
It's all about mindset over grammar. If I ask you to describe your living room, you're bored. And you have enough brain space left over to worry about making grammar mistakes. But if I ask for your opinion on a topic that makes you passionate or even angry,
your emotional brain takes over.
It does. You want to communicate your point so badly that you stop worrying about the perfect preposition. You just speak.
You forget to be afraid because you're too busy having an opinion.
That's it. He calls mistakes springboards. He's teaching ambition in the past perfect and gratitude in the present continuous. It's life coaching mixed with syntax. The goal isn't perfection, it's connection.
Which is the big lesson he learned in the Jaguar.
It is. He also released the memoir, The Book of Byrd, which is just full of these wild stories, lost passports, mistaking a Nobel laureate for a plumber. It really proves the concept.
So when we step back and look at the whole journey, from that barefoot boy to the Florida boardroom and back to the digital classroom, what's the big takeaway? What separates Byrd from any other good English teacher?
I think the core thing is that Byrd always treated English as a tool for navigation, not a subject for memorization. For most of us, language is like history, a bunch of facts you learn to pass a test. For Byrd, English was a vehicle.
It literally moved him.
It physically moved him. It drove him out of his small town, it sailed him around Florida, and it flew him back home to empower his community. He became a bridge between worlds.
A linguistic bridge.
And he showed that you don't have to lose your identity to cross that bridge. He's still the guy who loves Brazilian cheese bread. He didn't become American. He just became a bigger version of himself. And he never lost that biologist's eye.
Still looking for the patterns, the living parts of the language.
Exactly. And that raises a really provocative question for anyone listening, I think.
It does. We're all trying to learn something, right?
Yeah.
A new language, coding, an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And we usually approach it so rigidly.
We try to conquer it, beat it into submission.
Right. But what if you just flipped that mindset? What if you viewed that new skill like a living thing, like one of those butterflies Byrd studied?
Instead of trying to pin it down with rules, you just observe it. You listen to its rhythm, you try to mimic its movements.
You shadow it.
You shadow it. If you stopped trying to force the skill to fit your logic, and instead you tried to exist inside its rhythm like Byrd with those old vinyl records, how much faster would you learn?
It's a shift from studying something to inhabiting it. And it certainly worked for the boy from Uberlandia.
It took him all around the world and right back home again.
That's it for our deep dive into the life and method of bird. Thanks for listening, and keep chasing those kites.